Okay, now we want to talk about what controls the development of desert landforms. And so I'm going to be drawing some parallels between this and what rivers do. So first you have vegetation. Vegetation is going to have roots. It's going to help to hold the soil in place so that it's less likely to be blown away. Okay, then you have the load. So when we talked about rivers, we said that a river had a load and it had suspended materials in the water, and that it also had materials that flowed on the bottom of the river channel. So similarly, in a desert, you have suspended materials in the air, and so that's mainly going to be dust. And then you also have materials that are going to be on the surface of the desert, and that's going to be things like sand and pebbles. It also depends on the wind speed. So the greater the wind speed, the more it can erode, the more it can transport, and that is very similar to the water speed in a river. Then you have the amount of moisture in the air, and then also the temperature of the air. So basically your climate. So climate will also determine what kind of desert landforms that you can have. So what are some different types of desert weathering? So we mentioned that there are two types of weathering: physical weathering and then chemical weathering. So physical weathering is going to break down the rocks into smaller pieces, but it doesn't alter the rocks. And so here's some examples of physical weathering. It could be in a desert, it could be water, and this is going to be one of the primary ways that a desert changes the landscape, is going to be due to flash floods. But it can also be caused by the wind itself. So in this picture here, it shows a rock, and then as wind has blown across it and around it, you can see how it has eroded it into a pillar. Okay, another thing that is common in deserts, if it's hot, is going to be thermal expansion. So as a rock heats up, it tends to expand, and that can cause cracks that can break a rock apart. In climates where it's very cold, you can have ice wedging. So that's going to be where water gets into a crack. Then when it freezes, the water expands, it breaks open the rock a little bit. Then when it thaws, the ice turns back into a liquid. The liquid gets a little bit further into the crack, and then the process repeats itself. Okay, now in contrast to physical weathering, chemical weathering is actually going to change the identity of the minerals inside the rock, and this can also cause the rock to fall apart. So one method of chemical weathering is oxidation. So this is especially true for any rocks that contain minerals that have metals in them. Iron and magnesium, when they react to oxygen, they make oxides, so they make rust. Hydrolysis, okay, so this is going to be when minerals react with water, and we mentioned that, for example, pyroxene was a mineral, and when it reacts with water, it turns into a clay. And so in deserts, you tend to have large amounts of clay. Okay, then the third method of chemical weathering is dissolution. And so an example of this is going to be in deserts where water percolates down through the soil. It can carry calcium carbonate with it, calcite, and then deposit it further down in the soil layers, and then we call this caliche. Okay, so how does erosion occur in a desert? So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about erosion, transportation, and then deposition in a desert.